and I may have missed this, I apologize if I did, but I know that there's also great coordination that all the city departments are going to around potential ICE and crowd control, and I'm a little unclear about that. Talk to us a little bit about that.
I think, Chair, for that, that's the city council and the city leaders, city heads, department heads, so Chief Mitchell, things like that. They're the ones that will be going through training. And through that training, they'll look at our crowd control policy. We're not changing any policies, just to make that clear. We're not changing our policy. Crowd control staying, our mutual aid not being changed, okay, that all stays. I think the issue was, I'm not sure. There's a mutual aid policy. It is an older policy. It's cited an older K3 policy from 2014, excuse me, from 2014. That is updated to the current K3 policy that we currently have. So it was the only thing that we did was just cited the right current policy. That's it. Right, so there's no changes or anything like that to it.
Yeah, thank you. I think we need some clarification on that. And then also with that training, I'm just interested to hear what all the department heads are going through. So
yes, sir. Floyd Mitchell, Police Department. I think one of the things that's important is Mayor Lee and all the department heads have been having constant conversation in regards to the current political environment regarding the deployment of ICE and the deployment of potential National Guards throughout the United States. One of the things we've done, and we actually held a tabletop today at the EOC to talk about what some of the other departments should expect and what their involvement will be if there is a deployment here in Oakland of any size. So just making sure that whether it's the fire department, the library, or any of the other departments, there is a deployment at their place, what their response should be, going through that type of training, making sure they're thinking about if ICE shows up at a city facility, or if there's a large deployment of National Guard, what will be the city's response and how we would respond to those particular type of situations. Again, this is the federal government that is making these deployments, and as a sanctuary city, as outlined in our charter and in our policy, we are remaining in lockstep with our policy in that we do not coordinate with ICE and we do not provide services with ICE. What our chief of staff is talking about is if there is a disturbance, meaning ICE shows up and there is a disturbance where some protesters come, and this is the scenario that we envision, that ICE shows up, protesters show up. What is OPD's role and responsibility in regards to that particular situation? In regards to that particular situation, we are there to maintain the peace, keep the peace. That's it. We're not helping ICE do their thing, and we're going to provide a safe environment for those protesters to do their thing. But if they get into fighting and this, that, and the other, that's what we're there for, to make sure that we are maintaining the peace. And that's our role, period.
Excellent. One last question I have, because it was brought up to me before this meeting. I asked many people about that. And I know we've been trying to establish feedback loops to like maybe dispel any rumors of ICE or things like that. I think one concern is we've been seeing across another point of the nation where we have either vigilante folks or folks that are, unidentified masks that end up not being nice, right? They're committing crimes. Like, what's the best way or advice that maybe you could give the public, or is there information line, or what's the best way for us to be supportive, and maybe we can just continue to explore that in future meetings so that folks know that, like, oh, this is a real ICE operation. It's not just some thugs that are dressing up as ICE or something like that, right? Or some malicious group.
Yes, luckily, we haven't experienced a situation like that. We have had a couple of ICE deployments within the city limits of Oakland. From a deconfliction standpoint, the ICE agents have notified us that they are in our city and when they have left. They have not asked for any assistance from us, which we could not provide, but just to make sure that we don't have a blue on blue type of incident, they are, at this point, ICE, DHS is notifying us when they're in our city and where they are, and that's it.
Good Chair, since this was a question, in our group, and I think it might come up in public comment, but so we understand that, ICE is notifying OPD when they're in the area, and I think there's a concern of, if it's unclear, is there a policy or practice in place where OPD is verifying that if that it is ICE, or that they are following the laws of the city or the protocols?
I think it's very important for our community to understand what our role is as a municipal government versus that of the federal government. And in understanding that as a municipal government, our authority remains within the city limits of the city of Oakland. If there is a disturbance, we're going to go there to try to quell the disturbance and keep the peace. However, if any law enforcement agency is conducting an operation within the city limits of Oakland, and they are an official law enforcement agency or a federal law enforcement agency, I have no jurisdiction to go in there and stop them from doing that.
100%. So the question is, how do you verify that they are? Like, if you go to a scene and there's a disturbance and maybe OPD got a report that ICE is in the area, maybe not, and you show up, do you say, hey, show me identification? Do you have body cameras?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I have not said it to the chair. Yes, but I understand what you're saying now. Yes, usually there is a verification process. Someone would have they would have their identification with them or something like that. We have not ran into that situation yet. And I'm sorry if I'm not speaking into the mic. Sorry. I just realized that.
Is there any questions on the dais, commissioners, any follow-ups from the All right, so Chief of Staff, do we have public comment for agenda item number 7?
We do. We have two, one Mariano Contreras and Millie Cleveland. Raise your hand. Did you just put this up here? And Ann James.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you, DC. So two questions through the chair for the chief. So I think Furtado mentioned that if there's any kind of danger or the community is at risk, that's when the OPD will jump in. My question is, so if I'm detained by a mask-wearing person that refuses to identify themselves, that refuses to tell me who they are, I am in danger. And do I have a right as a citizen to defend myself? That's one question. And then second question through the chair for the chief. This is for the chief. Several months ago, you made a statement saying that your officers were fearful of doing their job because of the possibility of discipline. My question is, through the chair, do you still feel this way? Do your officers still feel this way? And has anything changed? Thank you.
Through the chair, first answer the question in regards to your scenario, possibly being detained by a federal ICE agent. What I would tell you and what I would tell anyone is to cooperate with them until and do what they say and let the cards play out. We have this conversation a lot of times when we're talking to our youth about there's nothing that is going to be determined at 10 or 2 o'clock in the morning when you're pulled over by one of our police officers. Do what they say. You know, put your hands behind your back, stop the car, get out of the car, or whatever they say. And then in the morning, when the dust is settled, we'll look at the body worn camera, we'll get interviews from everyone, and we'll find out if they violate the policy. So to answer your question, just follow the instructions and do what they say. If you resist arrest, or if you resist detainment, you know, you are subject to, the force. So what I would tell you is to do what they say. I'm going over the scenario that you gave me, going over the scenario that you gave me. So what I would tell you is to do what they said. In regards to your other question, we've touched on this several times, and I'm going to continue to voice my experience in the last 16 months. There is the disciplinary process here is one like I have never experienced before. There are situations to where it is obvious to me that the progressive disciplinary system is not in play. It has been obvious to me during my short time here that the system causes hesitation. I've had conversations with members of my police department, and it connects to the pursuit policy. The way the pursuit policy is now, most cars are going 30 to 35 miles an hour when the officer sees the violation or sees that the vehicle matches a suspect vehicle. When they turn on their lights, the guy hits the gas, they're already over 50 miles an hour. So the way the policy is written right now, the officer has to get a hold of the police officer, get a hold of the supervisor, and ask for permission to initiate that pursuit before he starts doing anything else. That car has already gone through the intersection at 50 plus miles an hour. That car is already 2 or 3 blocks away. So the non-response pursuits that we saw the increase in is the officer saying the vehicle is already over 50 miles an hour. It's already 2 or 3 blocks ahead of me. So our non-response pursuits went up, and we looked at the numbers over 135%. So I hope that answers your question. I am explaining to this community, this commission, and anyone else who wants to listen, what my experience has been over the last 16 months. You may not agree with my experience, but I am telling you from my experience, that's what I've seen.
All right, Chief, one last clarifying question, in regards, I'm sorry, man, and I keep on going back. And I just keep going back to the, ICE, situation, but from our last speaker, that just came up, and I think it goes back to the question I originally had was just around, if an ICE agent refuses to identify himself. Like what recourse does the general public have? What, if I'm walking out right now, do I call 911, dispatch? How do I protect myself if somebody refuses to identify themselves?
Well, I can't answer that question. If a federal agent advises you that you are being detained and they have a detainer and they take you to jail or they take you to a detention center, then you need to follow the instructions. And at that point in time, you get an attorney or whatever else comes with it. Again, it goes back to the conversations we have with our young people that I have all the time. Ma'am, but like I said, I know there's legislation right now in regards to that and how that will be handled. That is going on right now. What I think is important for people to understand that I, as a municipal police chief, cannot direct a federal agency on how they perform their activities. And I know this question is coming up quite a bit, and you want me to say that there are certain actions that I can take. I cannot take those actions. They are a federal agency. Their jurisdiction far outweighs mine.
And I just want to remind the audience too that we're following Robert's Rules of Order as well too. So, talking directly to the chief, you can yell out from the audience, but, I guess just from a safety standpoint, I saw the assumption is if I'm getting taken to a federal facility, then I could be like, well, the assumption is these must be ICE agents because they have access to a federal facility. If I'm getting put in the back of a pickup truck, then at that point, should I call 911? I mean, I am concerned that there are gonna be vigilante groups that are not the federal agents. We have no way of determining.
And I have had no information that that has occurred anywhere across the United States. So I believe if that situation would come up, then it would be addressed. But at this point in time, the folks that have been detained by the ICE agents or the DHS agents have been taken to federal facilities. What I would say is cooperate. So so the force is not being used against you out there in the street. Everyone knows that our use of force policies are far more comprehensive than any federal agency that I think would ever come to the city of Oakland. So, I'm trying to keep you from getting hurt. I'm trying to keep you from getting additional charges put against you by resisting arrest of a federal agency. So what I would tell my community right now is to follow the instructions of the federal agency. There's gonna be, tons of people out there with cell phones and everything else to document what occurred. Let's find out what happened and go from there from a legal standpoint. To say that you're gonna go out there and fight these people, resist arrest or fight back, shoot back, or whatever. I think you're putting yourself in jeopardy for something that we all don't know what's going to happen just yet.
Well, let's move on with public, chief. Let's move on with public comment and we'll. Yeah, we'll.
Why are you leaving?
Because he told me I could.
I'm telling you, thank you.
Thank you.
Instead of talking about what OPD can't do, why don't we talk about what they can do? And what their obligation is to the community to protect and serve. If there is ICE in the area, it seems to me that OPD should show up and record it using their body cameras. They have the right to ask the agent what agency they're from. They have the right to ask the agent, where are you taking people? They have the right to ask the agent, what documentation are you using to justify taking this person? So we don't have to talk about what they can't do. We can talk about what they can do. And as far as keeping the peace, what does that mean? That in LA, keeping the peace meant the police beat up protesters. So if I'm out there protesting and yelling at an ICE agent, OPD's job is to harass me? I don't think so. The people of Oakland have constitutional rights. And the city and the Oakland Police Department is supposed to function to protect those rights. So I strongly suggest that the police commission develop a policy for protocols for what OPD should do when ICE is in the vicinity. And to ask people to not resist being kidnapped by mass people with no identification is ridiculous and insulting.
I'm surprised that the chief hasn't heard about instances of people pretending to be law enforcement. There was an elected official who was assassinated a couple of months ago by somebody in police uniform. There have been attempted kidnappings, there have been attempted rapes by people who told the victim that they were an ICE agent. And ICE agents have been in the community. They were in my neighborhood without any identification, masked in cars that had no identification as well. And I'm happy to send that information to the chief of instances of this happening across the country, so that he can be aware that it does happen. And it has been discussed. I'm really, really shocked that there's been no policy to explain to OPD, and I really think this is a failure of the city to articulate to OPD specifically what a sanctuary city means in the context of policing and in context of public safety. I'm really shocked that that's not happened. And I'm a little concerned in terms of the level, in terms of the policies that do exist, that they're not the policies that we need at this moment. If ICE is violating the rights of people, and we've seen video of them attacking people, we've seen videos of them using force inappropriately, we've seen videos of them detaining lawful residents and lawful citizens for absolutely no reason or because they were being recorded. If that's going to happen in Oakland and OPD's position is I'm just going to control the crowd, then OPD needs to just step away. Because if you're not going to protect us, the very least you can do is not kettle us while we are attempting to protest what is happening and what is illegally happening in our communities. We need policies that articulate the issues that are at hand now. I'm also, by the way, kind of shocked that it sounds to me like ICE has been in the community for months and we've never told the officers specifically, here you go, here's the memo explaining to you what's going on with ICE and what the expectations of you are. And I pity the officer. I mean, like, how do you do that to an employee? You know, a new situation is coming up and you've never put together a memo saying, this is what I want you to understand about this situation? That's insane. The other question that I have is, I mean, and one of the things I really want to see them do is this IDing of law enforcement. This is something the city has to do. And one of the real concerns I have about this entire conversation to this point is kind of we're having conversations behind the scenes. The only reason you don't have an audience full of people is because you didn't say this was a meeting about immigration in our city. Because there's profound interest in this issue right now. And by all means, call a meeting next week and say, we're going to talk about how OPD engages with ICE and how OPD engages with any other federal agencies in our city. And I do understand what OPD can do versus what you can't stop ICE from doing what they're going to do. But we need to have a clear understanding, and that conversation has to be held in public. And that doesn't mean the police commission and the city council and the mayor's office talk to each other behind the scenes. We need public conversations about it, and then we need real policies written. Thank you.
Thank you.
No more at this time, Chair. No more comments at this time, Chair.
No more comments? All right, thank you. At this time, we will transition on. It's starting to get a little late, so I ask Commissioner to be brief, and then we'll be briefing on committee updates as well. But we'll move on to agenda item number 8, is a wellness presentation by alternate.